infer that I was like stupid or something.
I think you're racist, not stupid.
An issue with Black people where like so your eyes are really wide. Can you hear me?
Oh, no, I can. I'm sorry. I was reacting. I can hear you. Your
Maybe if you
video and this
understood what
discussion
these things
confirmed my
were.
fears that you believe in things that I think are horrendously unethical.
0% of you are subscribed. Fix that.
I'm adopted and my dad is white and he's an oppressor. And he might not have been a part of the people who have enslaved Black people, but he's still profiting off of a racist system. Brownies. If there's anything that you want brownie points for, I can just take this and put this in the jar. And I figured that maybe at the end we could count all the brownie points together.
Nice.
I just remember like the last video that you said that you're helping me out by platforming a content creator a 30th your size. So maybe we could start off with that for a brownie point if you wanted.
Oh, well, yeah, I want as many brownie points as I can get.
So Black separatists, they just want to be away from their oppressors. Painting them as just white nationalists, basically, like making that false equivalency is an issue because when people talk about that, when people talk about how they need to get away from their oppressors, people talk about how they have to have their own spaces, they're just painted as basically white nationalists and how that's a problem. It's making that space more hostile for people with those views.
Yeah, well, I guess I just really do think they're pretty similar, you know? When you take a look at a lot of Black separatist communities, there are a lot of underlying reactionary tendencies like homophobia, anti-Semitism. A lot of them do seem to believe in the same Jewish question, just from the opposite perspective. You know, Nazis think that Jewish people want to destroy white people by bringing in, Black and brown people. And Black separatists often think that Jewish people want to destroy Black people by promoting white industry at the expense of Black culture.
The Jews share their truth on how to make a dime.
And it seems like the fundamental bones are pretty similar, and then when you get into the logistics of creating an ethno-state, there's not really any way to do that without genocide, It seems like this logic always leads down a really bad road.
I'm talking about the people who just want to be away from their oppressors.
The language to me comes off really, really similar to white nationalist stuff, especially when we're dealing in like really ambiguous terms like they should have a right to live free of the oppressors. I mean, how can a person be an oppressor because of their race? Did all the millions of white people in South Africa like individually oppress all the Black people there? It just seems weird to be retaliatory in that way.
Just kind of reducing it to like, oh, this is white nationalism is very reductive.
I just don't understand how you could ever morally permit any plan of action which involves the deportation of a people based on their ethnic group,
That ethnic group colonized a group of people.
Oh, sure.
That's how. That's and if we disagree on that line, that's fine. But I think colonized people have to have the right to self-determination, what to do about the people who colonized them.
I agree that the ethnic group did indeed participate in the colonization, but I don't believe in taking blanket retribution against people for their bloodline because they're associated with the bloodline.
It's not about.
Well, it is.
It's about being away from the people who oppressed you. It's about taking your power back from the people who oppressed you.
You can do that without deportation or creating an ethno-state. In fact, I can't really think of a single time in history that ethnic disempowerment was improved through the initiation of genocide. If you want an anti-racist space, go for it. Godspeed. Make more of them. But when you essentialize it as like a white-black thing, I think that can lead to a lot of really bad roads,
I think there is a lane that like white people are in.
I don't think it's okay to say stay in your lane to Black people. I don't,
I found the no-name tweet where you called her a segregationist. The tweet is, why do white people follow my every move? This shit is not for you. And then you were like, well, I'm not a segregationist like this person. I'm just like,
I guess I just think that stuff is really...
starters, just don't do that.
I guess I just think that stuff is really weird, especially as a big public figure, To be a really huge public figure, and then for what seems to me like no reason at all, like, why make it a race thing? Like, you can make it a racism thing.
It is a race thing. It's already a race thing. What do you mean, make it a race thing?
It's a racism thing.
One.
If there's racism, you can call out racism without, like, being like, oh, this isn't for this racial group,
Why can't you just say it's not for white people? Like, why is that? Why is that okay? Why is that like a hill to die on? I don't understand.
Because it's racist. And
It's
unfortunately,
not a
this is the
feeling of
logic.
grievance. It's the fact that these people have been colonized, and they should have the right to be able to
It's
get
not the
rid
feeling of grievance. It's this grievance that I have. I
of
know.
colonization.
This is fundamentally the logic, the language that people engage in. If you want to, I encourage you to go back.
White nationalists talk about how colonized people shouldn't be colonized. That's the engagement here.
Yes.
That's what white people are talking about.
White nationalists
really believe that we should get rid of all the colonization. That's what white nationalists are.
White nationalists tend to be ultra isolationists who argue that the immigration of black and brown people into the US is a form of colonization pushed on us by the Jewish people who have controlled our banks and our government and our culture. They directly use the language.
What I'm saying is that like people who just disagree with you can't help but compare them to white nationalists.
Well,
and that's a huge issue.
Only if they sound like white nationalists.
Like, I don't understand like why you couldn't have like a certain space where it's like black people live there and black people are like, we only want to live here because we want to stay away from people who've oppressed us.
Oh, well.
Like, I don't understand. Like, there are places.
That's an ethno state.
I don't think.
This is what I mean about you being less mask on than white nationalists. They're usually not willing to just ethno states are the most destructive creation like that has ever been born of man. More harm has been created as a product of ethno states than possibly any other socio-political construct to have ever existed. These are like the absolute evil of human organization.
Why do black people have to integrate with white people? Like, if black people don't want to do that because they're tired of dealing with oppression,
this is what white nationalists say.
And they do that in a way that's not hurting people, like, why is that bad?
But ethno states always hurt people every time. I think it's kind of weird to judge members of a racial group based on characteristics you ascribe to them.
You think it's weird for black people to think that if you're white, you're probably going to have an issue with racism. Like, you think that's weird?
Look, whatever decision you want to make, by definition, seeing of a person of a given race and judging them based on like conditions you associate with that group is racist. Like if a person was walking through Detroit and saw a black guy and crossed the street because of it, you could argue there's a legitimate reason for that bias, but it's still racist, right?
Infer that I was like stupid or something. Said that I was laughed out of my college classes when I'm an honor student. Answer my question. How about that?
I think you're racist, not stupid. Look, here's a question, okay? What about a white gay person? Do you think it's okay for a white gay man to not want to be around black people? Black people are more homophobic than white people by a pretty significant amount. So maybe they've had experiences growing up where they're called like a pansy by black guys. And now, their bias is a product of, a lifetime of oppression.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that context, like if you're a gay person and like you've been around black people and they're like been really homophobic, I think that's valid.
Okay, so I guess you think racism is okay as long as it's being justified in the context of oppression? I think this fits, I don't know, the profile perfectly because it doesn't seem like you care very much about like people in power. The concept, like to you, it's dualistic. There's the oppressor and the oppressed. And action against the oppressor is implicitly more justified, just like contextualized through nuance, whereas any action done the other way around is essentialized, direct, and for which all members of that group are morally culpable.
I think like the thing with like interracial couples is like there's an issue with black people where like they don't want to date their own race because they think that, oh, so your eyes are really wide. Can you hear me?
Oh no, I can. I'm sorry. I was reacting. I can hear you.
Okay. And then I kept learning, and then I kept learning, and then I kept learning, and I was like, oh my gosh, I don't really know anything. Like, in this conversation, like, again, like, I was compared to Hitler. It's just like, that's kind of an extreme. Like.
Okay, I don't know if we're going to find any more agreement on this particular subject. The only thing that I guess bugs me at the end of this is that I think that not only is your logic almost identical to a lot of white nationalists that I've talked to, you're actually more mask off than they're willing to be, Like, you have receded now.
I'm masked off because I am talking about racism here.
And so are they.
Seem to understand that. You seem to think that when people talk about
hello darkness, my old friend,
we need to let the people who've been colonized figure out what to do about the people who've colonized them and be able to live without being colonized. You think that's the same thing as white nationalism.
So if it leads
that's my problem.
If it leads to racial essentialism, that then leads to the creation of an ethno-state, then yeah, I would say that's essentially white nationalism, except obviously it's not for white people. Look, the issue that I have is when I talk to white nationalists, they hide their intentions a lot better than you seem to have. They're usually like
I'm not. I
cloaked.
don't
Wait,
have
please,
anything
please,
to
please,
hide,
please,
Vaush.
please.
I don't have
They
anything to hide.
cloak their talking points in metaphor and dog whistle. You know, usually they talk about how they don't have a problem with any of the races. They don't think anyone is worse or better than the others. They just think that we have different cultures. But
Talk about a fumble.
I'm not even saying you have to agree with separatists. I'm not even saying that. I'm just saying, like, try to understand their pain instead of just comparing them to Hitler or something.
well, I mean,
That's really
you
it.
can do both, you know, if they're being Hitler-esque.
It's like literally when I talk about Black people having their own self-determination.
Okay, but that's
You compared me to Hitler.
that is
You know what I'm saying?
explicitly the line that white nationalists use. So that doesn't differentiate you from them at all. The
Right,
devil's
but
in the
even though I'm
details.
like, okay, genocide like shouldn't happen, but people should figure out how to get rid of their colonizers, get rid of colonialism, and they need to like have that conversation and figure out what that is, and it's look different for every place. You can't have that conversation without comparing me to Hitler.
No,
You know what I'm saying?
I
You
can
literally
have.
you accused No Name of being a segregationist because all she said was this tweet isn't for white people.
I
You know what I'm
I
saying? Like
do
those
disagree.
are such extremes.
I do disagree with the language of her tweet.
You can disagree without comparing these people to white nationalists.
what
That's
if
what I'm
I? But
saying.
what if I
Because
think they're
Black
like
people are
white
talking about this
nationalists?
stuff.
I don't have a problem with talking about it. Your
Maybe if you
video and this
understood
discussion
what these things
confirmed my
were.
fears that you believe in things that I think are horrendously unethical. I think my criticisms here are salient. I don't think these are spurious accusations that I made without thought.
And like even in when I'm talking about like people like having the autonomy to get rid of colonialism, like there's all these different situations of what that looks like. And then your point is that I'm like Hitler. You know what I'm saying? Like
I
that's a huge leap.
I
But
don't
for
think
you,
that's
it's
a
not. But I
summary.
think you need to actually understand about like what colonial looks like. Like learn about countries that have decolonized
Is that
themselves.
what
Learn
you've
about what that
got
looks
out
like.
of
There's like a
this?
bunch of this whole time you've tried to paint me as someone who's cool with genocide.
So the two
You know
so
what I'm saying? We're stuck in that for most of the
so
debate.
over the course of this conversation, there are two things that you kept doing and continue to do. One of them is that you said that oppressed peoples have a moral right, if they choose to excise people of different races if those were colonizers. That is a form of genocide. You said that explicitly. You can't back out of that. And secondly, you continue to essentialize socioeconomic trends to white people if they're the ones disproportionately committing it, which I think hinders your analysis. Those are two things you do, and I think that a lot of white nationalists do exactly those two things as well. In fact, that logic, those are like the two foundations of ethno-state creation. So that's the problem that I have, you know? And I don't think that's a spurious comparison. I think that it's fair. I wish that you would, at the very least, understand why I believe that, as opposed to strawmanning me and framing me as someone who's so wildly ignorant and like triggered by the sight of black people that I just freak out and start making like random accusations, because I don't think that's descriptive of this.
Me just saying like there might have to be a time where people get rid of the people who are colonized. Like that's not the same. It's just like having like a mass genocide.
Well,
Like-
you know, getting rid of is a very wide term that can be applied in a number of
for
ways.
example, like again, I gave the example of Kenya, who were like able to get rid of their
But I
colonizers
explicitly asked you
What
about
is-
the mass deportation of the 6 million white people in South Africa, and you said that it was the right of black South Africans to do that. You're saying that they have a right to commit a genocide. That's a pro-genocide stance as far as I'm concerned.
I think they have the right to at least figure out if they want the colonizers to be there or not, and like how to do that process. But
My friend.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I really... So how many brownie points did we get?
you got one because earlier you were talking about how in a different video you were saying that you platformed a creator 1/30th of your size, so you got a brownie point for that.
Bam! Just like that. That's all there is to it, Dustin. That's all there is to it. A winner! Just like that.
Do you feel
But
platformed right
not
now?
much else, sadly.
Well, I guess we'll both fight colonialism in our own ways, you know? I've read it. I read it extensively before my debate with Charlie Kirk. Like intersectional analysis in favor of like retributive justice, you know? Adopting the same person as racist, like earlier experiences in your life where you felt like a unstoppable tidal wave. Hey, Jen. Go. Be free. Go. I can only say I think it's pretty bad. You know, I think that ethnostates are pretty bad altogether.
Okay. I think they're generally probably a bad idea, but I understand if Black people want to not be around people who oppress them.
Well, like I
And
said,
to that extent.
just don't make any sundown towns, okay? If any white Instagrammers van on through and stay at the hotel in the all-Black ethno-city, then just make sure they make it out okay. And I guess the worst elements of the insular white communities will be avoided. I do wish I'd gotten more brownie points. You sort of set that up, and I do wish I had had more.
Well, at least you got that one for platforming a content creator a 30th of your size.
Yeah. Well, there's always next time. I hope you have a wonderful evening.
All right, goodbye.
Take care. I don't think she understands how so much of the stuff that she says really is like identical to. I know people often get mad at me when I make the comparisons with the language, like you call everything a Nazi, and I do get that criticism, but I feel like in this case these are basically direct one-to-one parallels with a lot of the stuff that she believes. I mean, it's like direct, like in justification, in language, in intent to some extent. Like all that stuff. I feel like it's mirrored very clearly. Black separatists, white nationalists.
Black nationalism, black separatism, white nationalist, black separatist, white nationalist, white nationalist.
Black separatist, black separatists.
Black separatist, white nationalism, white nationalism.
White nationalists.
White nationalist, white nationalist, white nationalist, white nationalist.
White nationalists.
White nationalist.
Black separatists, white nationalists, and black separatists.
Black separatists, black separatists, white nationalists, white nationalism, white nationalists.
White nationalists. White nationalists. White nationalists.
White nationalists. White nationalists. Black nationalists.
White nationalists.
White nationalism.
Black nationalism. Black separatism. White nationalists. White nationalists.
White nationalists. Black nationalists. Black nationalism. White supremacists. White nationalism. Black nationalism. Black nationalism.
Black separatists. White nationalists. White nationalists. White nationalism.